Anna. Today we're talking about dating versus courting. This is something Baba and I, we talk about a lot amongst each other, and something that we actually suffered from, which was prolonged singlehood.
Right.
And this is something that really needs to be addressed in our community. What?
Yeah, so basically we understand that prolonged singlehood is a social disease. As African people, we're accustomed to becoming husbands, wives, mothers, fathers. So whenever we're talking about a situation of prolonged singlehood, understand this is a period of stagnation in our lives, where we should be developing a vision for our future, but we're stuck in these spaces of stagnancy. So this video, what we're doing is we're borrowing from our personal experiences and what we just observed and our research, and trying to give our brothers and sisters some insight as to how they can begin to navigate out of singlehood into wifehood and husbandhood.
Right. So we have notes here. We also have a class coming up on August the 5th. I have the comment pinned. It's called Indivisible. We've actually done the class before, but we have added a few more things to it as we learn and as we evolve. So we've created a new Eventbrite link, and that link is in our bio. You can RSVP for that if you feel called to. Also, if you know anybody that's single, know anybody that's in a relationship or trying to evolve their relationships, share this with them, because our goal is to help our people not just get into relationships, but stay in them and have healthy relationships for ourselves and for our children.
Right.
So like we said, today we're talking about dating versus courting, and this is a cultural understanding, a cultural analysis of these two, right? So let's go ahead and hop into it. So Baba, let's go ahead and give the definition of what courtship is, and then I'll talk about dating.
Okay, so courtship is an indigenous African institution for nation building. It prioritizes compassion and intentionality, and its form is culturally determined. So one thing about courtship you have to know is that this is something of African origin. So whenever we're talking about courtship, this is not something new or something that we're borrowing from some other group, but this is something that's rooted in our cultural DNA. And it's always the prelude to marriage. And that's how it just shows how intentional we are as Africans, is we're always thinking about how do we build that family dynamic.
Right. And then for dating, we have the definition as a European invention for economic and psychological exploitation that caters to the selfish appetites of the men and women involved. All right, so I know that sounds not like what we know dating to be, but what we're coming into this video is we want to give a better understanding, because remember, in a lot of our videos we talk about how European culture has distorted so many things that we think are normal, that we think are functional. And what we want to bring today is a historical background on what dating is, where it comes from, and why it started to be practiced, right? And then the more we understand where it came from, who it came from, we can understand better if it can apply to us or not, right? So let's go ahead and give the history of dating and courtship.
Right, so now I'm going to read a short excerpt from an article that we found, and in this article it talks about the history of dating, because remember, dating has not always existed. Dating is relatively new in history, and when we understand how new that dating is in the historical scope of things, we can have a better grasp on what we're doing when we call ourselves dating. So the excerpt reads: the first use of the word dating is often attributed to American columnist George A. Ade in the Chicago Record in 1896. In one of his columns, he told the story of a clerk named Artie, whose girlfriend's head was getting turned by other men. When Artie confronted her, he said, "I suppose other boys fill in all my dates," alluding to the dates in his girlfriend's diary that may have been filled by plans with other guys.
So let's explain.
Let's pause here. So basically, Artie, he's in this relationship with another woman, but he says that this woman has a private diary. And in this private diary, she's listing the names of other men who she's romantically involved with. So already
she got a rotation.
She got a rotation. So already from the beginning, we see that the culture of dating, one, is European, and two, it involves serial monogamy, almost like a form of prostitution. So meaning the woman, she has multiple men who are trying to earn her favor. So for each man, she has to put a date next to his name.
So this is where the term came from.
So this is where the term comes from. So that means when we're talking about dating, we aren't talking about something that's stable and committed. We're talking about something that's very erratic, very happenstance, very controlled by the appetite.
Very prostitute.
Very prostitute.
This was a white woman. I don't know if you said that.
Right,
already.
a white
This is
woman.
a white man and a white woman. So this is where it originated. So before this, courtship for us. We'll talk about what they was doing before dating.
Yes.
But courtship was the norm.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, so to further elaborate, this was an era of early feminism. So feminism was a major influence in the mainstreaming of Western dating culture.
Right.
Because in dating, white women could leave the home unaccompanied, they could visit bars, they could have premarital sex, and most importantly, they could control their inheritance. By that I mean, within the European system, when a woman got married, all of the property that was accumulated in that marriage, if they got a divorce, it went to the man. So once they changed that law and says, okay, now when the man and the woman divorce, the woman can get a portion of that inheritance, that made the woman say, okay, I don't have to court anymore. Now I can date because I have more control over the inheritance.
It was a way for the white woman to break free, right?
Yes.
Because she felt oppressed. She felt confined to the home. So all of these things are really ways for the white woman to escape her oppressive roles, which are motherhood and wifehood. Those roles are not oppressive for us, but they are oppressive for her because she's not equipped to do them.
So these systems of dating, again, didn't exist in Africa because within the African environment, we had an established system of courtship, okay? So that's just giving a brief background as to what the history of dating, what the origins of dating is, and what was the context in which it was first mentioned.
Right.
All right? So next, we want to talk about why does white culture hate courtship? Why is courtship looked at something as confining and suppressive to women, whereas dating is seen as liberating? Well, again, the article says, having your eggs in a number of baskets isn't unheard of in our modern day dating culture. But this wasn't always the case. Once upon a time, you didn't date to find someone you had an amazing connection with. You courted to find someone respectable who wouldn't pour your inheritance down the drain. Notice the inheritance. Nietzsche Hoxton, author of The Curious History of Dating, explains that up until 1870, women couldn't keep property or money or goods they inherited upon marriage until a law was passed that changed this. Because they had to give everything to the person they're married to, it really mattered that the person they married wasn't going to spend the family fortune. Again, this connection to property, this is a way of getting the woman to stay within the marriage because she didn't want to lose her property.
She didn't want to lose her
So
property.
again, courtship was not focused on that property, but again, it was focused on the expansion of the family. Okay, so this is just giving you that cultural background as to what separates the European concept of courtship and dating from the African concept of courtship. All right?
Okay, so now we're going to get into our points. So we have 7 points here, and we're going to talk about, first we're going to talk about dating, then we're going to talk about courtship, and then we'll talk about marriage at the end.
Right.
All right, so our first point in this is dating is unsustainable and does not help or lead to marriage.
Yes, it's intrinsically unstable. So and specifically when we're talking about dating within marriages, okay, because dating within marriages, what it does is it reverses the progress of marriage, and it's a sign of uncertainty within the marriage.
Right, and we'll talk about dating within the marriage towards the end,
Right.
because that's something that people tell you. You got to date within your marriage. You got to spice things up. Listen, that ain't it.
Yes.
So let's talk about dating within marriage. Oh, that was the one we just said. Okay,
Yeah.
so it also puts the man and the woman in a mindset that they are competing for each other, right? So this competition element is intrinsic to dating,
Yes.
right? And let's talk about some of the terms
Right.
that dating has. So it's like the
dating market.
the dating market,
Yeah.
the dating pool,
Yeah.
like I'm off the market
Yes,
now.
yes.
Like all of these terms are telling us that this is a competition.
Yes.
And who's competing?
Yes.
White women were competing with the power of the man. So now they wanted to be the ones who were like, I decide if I want to, be in a relationship or date or whatever. Because before they didn't really have that say. Versus with us, like we said, we were courting. Our families were involved, right? In our relationships. White people took the family out. So another point is serious. Oh, this is still about marriages.
So it also promotes ritualized fighting and non-cooperation through the vocabulary. So not only do you have terms like I'm on the market or I'm off the market, but you have date rape, meaning within the dating culture, what you have is an epidemic of rape. And the reason why you have this is because unlike courtship, dating doesn't provide that same protective shield.
Right.
Because when we're talking about courtship, again, the community is invested in the relationship. Meaning, if a man is preying on a woman, he's not just going to bring shame upon himself, he's going to bring shame upon his family.
Right, so he has to be on his P's and Q's.
So he has to abide by a certain standard of behavior that within the dating environment, especially if there's alcohol flowing, which was one of the common environments where early dating took place in these bars, you're going to have a high likelihood of predatory behavior. You're going to have a high likelihood of manipulation and abuse.
Right.
So when we're talking about dating, we have to understand within a Western environment, these are ways to program us to engage in forms of ritualized fighting and non-cooperation.
Right. And dating, like you said, it pulls us out of the home. So how do I know if this is a good woman if I don't see her in her element? The home is our element. The home is where we have curated space and where we can, he can feel the aura, our aura better if he meets us in our home. But if he pulls us out of the home or we pull ourselves out of the home and we're out at these bars and at these movies and at these dinners, this is not cohesive with a marital space. When you're married, you're in the home with your children. So why are we getting to know each other at CC's Pizza?
Yes. Yes. And another thing about dating is it relies on a trivial preference-based model.
Yes.
Meaning when you're dating someone, you may have like a checklist. And on these checklists, these are all things that you want the person you're dating to have, but none of these things usually are translatable to their role as mothers, fathers, husbands, or wives. So you want to be a certain height. You want them to have a certain build. You want them to have a certain amount of income. You want them to have a certain car. All of these things, these are compatible with the dating culture. Because remember, when we're talking about dating, we're talking about consumerism. We're talking about going out into spaces that are curated by corporations and then using all of our capital to spend and not really form a relationship, an intimate relationship, but have these organizations, these movie theaters, restaurants, bars, clubs, mediate our relationships.
Yeah, it's a spending competition.
It's a spending
and
competition.
now your judgment is now skewed. Your judgment has now been twisted because now this person is love bombing you. Love bombing can't happen in courtship because there's other people there to help you decipher what you're dealing with. But when you're dating, it's just you and that person. So manipulation can happen, lies, deceit, like all of these things can happen because it's just you and that person. Courtship says, no, I need my family to help me, and he has his family to help him to make these decisions. We need our families, right? And we'll talk about that further down. We need our families invested in our relationships. We cannot do this. We're not supposed to be doing this alone.
No.
We're not supposed to be doing it alone. And dating, because it's an individualist, and white people, because they're individuals, they're individualist people, they have fed us that juice. We've drunken the individualist juice, and now we think that we can go into this dating market and prove ourselves to people. And we also want to talk about how the longer you date, the harder it is for you to get into relationships, because remember we talked about it's a competition, and at some point you start getting tired, right? You start feeling drained. You start feeling like, I've been dating now for what, 10 years? Like, you see, so it's designed for you to feel worn down, and this is why we have prolonged singlehood. People were not single for as long as they are now, and because dating is not sustainable. Dating is not sustainable for us as black people. It's sustainable for white people, and we're going to talk about in a second why it's sustainable for white people and why it's not sustainable for us. But we have to really understand that dating was not designed for us. It's designed for us to get fatigued. It's designed for depression. It's very isolating, and when you constantly pour your emotions and you're vulnerable with all these different people for over extended period of time, you start to feel defeated, right? You start to feel defeated. And we were, in a point where we were dating for a lot. We didn't get married until we were 30.
Right.
That's too long.
Yeah.
That's too long. We shouldn't be single for that long.
Yeah.
Right? And then on other cultures, white culture will tell you that that's oppressive. You shouldn't be. You should use those years to to go have fun and live your life and start your career. No. Like I said, this is for white people because. Let's go ahead and get into this next slide.
Yes.
So the next point that we have is African women. I want y'all to lean in to this one. African women are more valuable than white women. So we don't need to rely on dating. Okay? We don't need to rely on dating as black women because we have intrinsic value. Meaning we don't have to go out on the market and stand there and say, I have this, I have that. We are attractive, right? We can attract the right man, the right complement to us because we have intrinsic value. And the men were at one point, they knew this.
When you have culture, the culture, what it does is it accentuates the value of the woman.
Right.
That's what African culture was designed to do.
Exactly.
It was designed to enshrine all those things that made the African woman an asset to her family and her people. So quickly, I think we will have to make a distinction because a lot of this is research. This is not just ad hominem pejorative remarks.
Right.
We heavily research this. So when you're talking about how societies conceive of and value their women, they operate in 3 domains of power, I call it. It's the economic domain, it's the spiritual domain, and it's the domestic domain. Okay, let's look at white women first. In the economic domain, the primary role that in the beginnings of her economic power that the white woman operated in was that of a prostitute. Okay? Meaning, when you looked at all the white women, the only white woman who was owning money, most likely, was selling herself. All the other white women were confined to the home. Meanwhile...
And the prostitute was looked at as liberated.
Right. They was looked at as liberated. In fact, there's a book called Western Sexuality, and it says the prostitute was recognized as a pillar of family life. That's a quote from the book, pillar of family life.
These are white people themselves saying this.
Yes.
And these housewives were looking at the prostitutes and aspiring and wishing that they could have that lifestyle.
So in the economic domain, within the white spaces, the prostitute was the ideal.
Right.
Okay, within the spiritual domain, the white woman was known as the witch. And we know about this historically in the witch trials and the Inquisition. Okay, the burning at the stake. Any white woman who tried to practice any spirituality, she was instantly demonized as a witch and burned at the stake. You had what was called femicide, meaning the mass killing of women.
Which makes sense.
Which is inconceivable within African environments because, again, within the African environment, the value of the women is accentuated by their social institutions.
Right.
Okay, and then lastly, in the domestic space, the white woman was a neglectful mother. And we see this with the proliferation of orphanages within white societies. We see this with in Europe where white women would leave their babies on doorsteps, sometimes leaving them to be nursed by donkeys and goats. And this is something I talk about in the father trimester, meaning you have this tradition of neglect with white women, meaning they're unable to nourish their young, they're unable to nourish their babies. So that's in the domestic realm, they represent a tradition of neglect. Okay, now let's look on the other side of the world, in the southern cradle in Africa. What was the 3 ways in which African women demonstrated their value? So within the economic realm, you want to talk?
Yeah. So for the African woman, she was an agriculturalist.
Right.
Economically, she controlled the agriculture, right? This is where our power was. And then in the spiritual realm, spiritual space, what did we have? We were priestess.
Yes.
We were women who they would come to and seek advice. They trusted that we had the intuition and the clairvoyance enough to be able to give sound, advice. And then on the other side, the last point is domestically within the home. How were we? We were the village mother. We practiced extended motherhood, meaning we were nurturing to our husbands, our sisters, our children. Everybody benefited from the presence of the African woman, and we don't see that with the white woman. And this is why she needs dating.
Yes. So essentially, that distinction we drew is between the white woman within her cultural cradle, she's seen as a cultural liability. Within the African southern cradle, the woman is seen as a cultural administrator or a cultural asset. So when you have these 2 cultures, that's going to shape how people think of courtship. Meaning courtship is going to be a burden within the white society because the women aren't valued. And courtship is going to be an asset within the African society because the women are valued. So what we're arguing is we have to return back to that African memory and say, okay, because our women have value, courtship also has value. Okay?
This is it. And this is why when we talk about Africa and we identify as who we are, which is Africans, it's not just for this like race on like what are we? Are we Moors? Are we this? Are we that? It's like no. What we're saying is this is what culturally is going to keep us sound. Culturally healing is what we're looking for, and so this is deeper than just what we call ourselves. This is what is culturally right for us to be doing, and courtship is what aligns better with who we are as Black people, African people, than dating.
Right. So we're going to list out, and this is just under the header, courtship plays a protective role, okay? Meaning courtship shields our relationships from the threats of Western culture. We already discussed that, okay? Courtship engages the woman in her element, which is the family home. Meaning, when you're courting a woman, you're not just seeing her as your girlfriend. No, she's being seen as a daughter. She's being seen as a niece. She's being seen as somebody's cousin, somebody's sister, somebody's extended mother, some other woman's friend. You see her life. You get to see her in a more holistic way, because you're not just seeing her through that consumerist lens that dating culture compels us to look at her. So understand, when we're courting someone, we're looking at the whole person, not just a fraction of that person.
Right. And dating doesn't do that. Dating pulls us, like we said, pulls us away from each other. Really, it's a mediator. We talk about mediators. I talked about it also in the Barbie video. We were talking about how toys are mediators. Whenever you start adding things that you need into your relationships, be it intimate or familial, that's something that's new. That's an additive. And when you take those things away, you start getting to the essence of who that person is, and you root and you ground your relationship into a healthier place. And this is why we're seeing divorce rates and infidelity and all these things happening, because all these people are doing what? They're dating.
Right.
They're dating in the beginning stages. They date throughout their marriage, and then what happens is the dating, it starts to get stale, right? You start being like, because you have to ask yourself, why do you need this extra stimulus,
yes.
right? Why do you need that? Because, like we said, marriage is confined to the home. That's usually where you are the most. And that's where your power is felt the most, is in the home. So when we're dating and we're out, we're not feeling our power.
That power is being siphoned off.
That energy is being harvested, right?
Yes.
That's harvested energy happening, and we're not even really looking into that person, and that person isn't able to look into us either, because it's too clouded, it's too confused, and we need space and time, and we need our families behind us, like I said earlier, to really guide us and help us to get into the right relationships.
Right. And the last points we want to make is that courtship puts both the man and the woman in control of the relationship.
Right.
This is what we mean when we say courtship is about intentionality. So the analogy I like to use is, imagine if you're compare a man and a woman going out together, but they're both in the front seat, meaning the woman is in the passenger seat, she's giving directions, and the man is driving. That's like courtship.
Right.
Meaning you have the mind, and then you have the body. You have the technical part, then you have the intellectual part. Dating is like two people sitting in the back seat of an Uber, and the Uber driver is driving you to wherever he wants to go, and you're having no control over how fast you get to the destination, what route you take to the destination. And that's what we're saying. When we're dating, we're relinquishing the power of curation if you're a woman, and protection if you're a man. We're saying we're relinquishing that dynamic to corporate America, and we're allowing corporate America to drive us to our destination, instead of our culture to drive us to our destination.
And where do you think corporate America wants relationships in destination to be?
Off the cliff.
Dead. Right. That's what they want. Like they don't want us to be in meaningful relationships. They want us to rely on dating. They want us to rely on movie nights and vacations. Like they want us Netflix and shit. Like they want us to rely on things that do not center our family, our responsibility, and our children. Anything that takes us out of those spaces, they are going to pump those in our faces. So we have to be very mindful and very intentional when we go into these spaces, and we have to understand everything that Black people do in America is fabricated and created for us to do it. It's not like whoops, they happen to just keep dating each other. Like,
Right.
no, they're
this.
encouraging this,
Yeah.
right? They're creating all these restaurants. We lived in Atlanta. It's restaurants everywhere.
Yeah.
Date spots everywhere. You can literally do something every single night for years, and
Yeah.
it'll be something new. You see? So they've created these cities, they've created these environments for us to date each other endlessly, even within our marriage.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about in a second how dating within the marriage is an absolute no.
Right. So, in the last point, the higher your value as a woman, the more you should be courting instead of dating. And remember, value is culturally ascribed. We're not talking about how you feel or what somebody says.
Right.
What does your culture, how does your culture affirm you as a man or a woman? And the higher your value as a woman, the more you're going to have courtship. And
Right.
the lower your value, meaning the more society disparages you as a woman, the more you're going to be pushed into dating as a substitute for courting.
The more you don't feel your power as a woman,
Yeah.
the more you think that your power is in your looks
Yeah.
and what you can buy and how many men you can attract, the longer you'll be dating.
Right, right.
And this is why you'll see women who would be like, she's so beautiful, I can't believe she's still single.
Right.
Well, she's been dating for 10, 12 years now, so this is all she knows how to do. This is it. And this is why we say the longer you date, the harder it is for you to maintain relationships when you do get them. Because all you know is dating. You don't know how to be grounded and be at home and nurture and be patient with one another. You don't know how to do that. All you know is like on to the next. And like we said, the origin of dating is serial dating.
Yes.
The origin of dating is not I'm dating one person.
I'm listing names in my diary.
Literally, Katie was writing
Yeah.
names
Yeah.
for different dates. That
Yeah.
lets you know that this dating was never designed for meaningful relationships. This is designed for white women to compete with their men because they hated being in their presence.
Yes, yes. So courtship is the byproduct of a functional culture. And if this should have been evident by now.
Right.
Meaning if your culture is disorganized, you're not going to have courtship as an institution that's championed. You're going to have dating. And the more culturalist you are, meaning the less culture you have, the more you're going to rely on that dating. Again, the commercial influence infringes on the cultural influence. Okay, so there's always this tension between the commercial culture
Right.
and the indigenous culture. And the indigenous culture is usually centered around family, whereas the commercial culture is centered around profit. Okay, so that's that profit motive. It always undermines the integrity of our cultural
Yeah.
institutions.
And we talked about that with the in the Barbie video.
Right.
So this is why we have to be mindful of the end goal. The people who are creating these things, we have to ask ourselves, what do they want for us? And if they don't want our relationships to be healthy, they're going to encourage us to do things like date.
Yeah. So courtship, they're going to encourage us to date, and in dating, our standards of evaluation decline. Because within courtship, what you have is you
Right.
have a higher standard of evaluation.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
when you're courting, the standard of evaluation is moral values and the character of the man or the woman. When you're dating, that's not the case.
No.
Also, the quality of the character is central to courtship, whereas dating is the enjoyment of your outings. Meaning, when you go out with somebody, they say, "How was your date?" If you enjoyed it, there's a second
We
date.
had so much
If
fun
you enjoy
together.
the second date, you go on the third date. If
Right.
you enjoy the third date, you go on the fourth date. But throughout the first, second, third, and fourth date, you never really have time to evaluate the character of the person. Why? Because the person is not in their element. Meaning they're not in their community. Remember, you can only read the values of a person in how they relate to the people within their
Around
community.
them.
Not how they navigate, commercial environments. No, how do they interact with their parents? How do they interact with children? How do they interact with their brothers and sisters? This is going to give you a much clearer picture about who this person is from a moral point of view than any type of dating can give you.
Absolutely.
So again, we have to begin maturing and saying, okay, when we evaluate somebody, are we evaluating them based on our interests, our personal interests, or are we evaluating based on our cultural standards?
Right, and I love that you said that because that's exactly what a lot of people say. They'll be
Yeah.
like, we've been together for 10 years, but I really didn't know him. It's
Right.
like, look,
because you
how
didn't get him in a space
You didn't
where
get him in-
it was opportunity to know
right.
him.
You didn't get him in that space. He didn't get you in that space. You guys met each other and you guys created this bond and this connection in the midst of consumerist items. And then once you get in the marriage, you're like, dang, like I didn't really like you. But it's you see, you've already made that commitment. So what we really have to get back to is saying, how can I get to this person's essence? How can he see my essence? Because imagine a man who he sees the value of the woman as a mother and as a wife. He's not gonna leave that. No. You see, because that's hard to come by. Right. So he's gonna be like, look, no. But when you've dated, and you've dated for such a long time, you only really know how to relate to each other through dates.
If there's a monetary exchange involved,
right? And
then you base the value of the man based on how much
he can spend on you,
not how much he cares. Because how do you monetize care? You see, you can't monetize care. Right. You see, so we have to understand the way I put it is I say love is like planting a tree. It's not buying flowers. You see, meaning planting a tree, that's like what? That's long term. That requires discipline. That requires regular checkups. That requires a long range vision. The tree feeds people. The tree gives people shelter. It gives people sustenance. But you have to wait.
You gotta be patient to get that
it's
tree.
Not instant. Right. It's not. And flowers die immediately. They die within a week. Tree lasts for a long time. So we have to have a more tree mindset when we're thinking about our relationships and how we navigate our periods of singlehood into marriage. Meaning we have to say, okay, what do I envision for myself and this person and our family? Because remember, familyhood is the goal. You see, what do I envision for my family going down the line? So
the tree is the courtship. Yes. And the flowers are dating.
That's dating.
Because they don't last long.
Yeah, it's very, what they call ephemeral. Ephemeral.
They look beautiful, but you don't got to wait for them. You can just go out and buy it. Yeah. Imagine if a man came to you and said, I just planted a tree, and this tree symbolizes my commitment to you and our future children.
Yes.
Where you gonna go, sis? Yes. You're not gonna go nowhere. You're gonna be like...
The tree can stand in storms, but a strong wind will blow them flowers away. You see,
the flowers
are weak.
And what do we do when we get married? What do we walk down the aisle with when we get married? Flowers.
But what do they have sacred rituals under in Africa?
Trees.
Trees is where we get our sustenance, not flowers.
And we look at flowers as a symbol of love. You get the roses, and the Valentine's Day when somebody gives you flowers, you're like, he must love me.
It's nice. It looks nice.
He gave me flowers. Meanwhile, these flowers don't compare. It's a representation of a disconnect. Yes. We need to
fragility.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Your relationship is only as durable as that flower. You see, that's essentially what's happening.
But we have to root our relationships and our marriages in something tangible and in a soil that can feed that tree, right? And this is why we talk about leaving America. And for us, our marriage has been in Africa. We got married and we were only in the U.S. for 1 month and then we left. Yeah. So our marriage is rooted in a healthier soil for marriages.
Yes, nutritionally rich,
right? Yeah. Nutritionally rich people, nutritionally rich environment. So because of that, our marriage looks and feels a lot different than if we were in the U.S. I say all the time, I don't know how our marriage would look. It wouldn't look like this though.
Unrecognizable.
It wouldn't look like this, right? Because we dated. When we didn't know. Yeah. But what we know now is that's not sustainable. No. Dating is not sustainable for us as black people because we have value, we have intrinsic value, and the dating ignores that value.
It wants to harvest
your true value by taking your taking your money. So it's harvesting your energy and it's taking your money at the same time and leading you possibly into a relationship, that is not going to last decades.
Yes. So now that we've come upon the topic of marriage, I think it's important to note that marriages are most potent within the home.
Say it again.
Marriages are most potent within the home. Not at the club, not at the park, not at the movie theater, not at the town hall meeting.
What about at the hotel?
Not at the hotel, the motel, or the Holiday Inn.
Or the Holiday Inn.
It's that the marriage is not potent in any of those places. Marriage is most potent in the home. Okay. Now, why is marriage most potent in the home? Marriage is about sovereignty and stabilization of the home environment for the children. That means curation plus protection. The woman is curating the space, meaning she's organizing it for what? to implant her essence into that space so that she can anchor all the people in that home. And the man is there to protect the perimeter,
right.
to shield that home from any evil or any ill-intended forces who want to infringe upon that family home.
Right.
Okay, so when you get that curator and that protector and that dynamic works together, that's securing the home, and that's also securing the marriage. And also, I think when you rely on dating within your marriage, this is a sign that the marriage is internally weak.
Very weak.
Because what it needs is an external stimulus, an artificial aid that wasn't created within that home space, that curated space that the woman made. They need something from the outside to come in and lend vitality to the home. And what we're saying is, if the woman, if the wife within that marriage, if she's a true curator, everything that family needs is within that home, spiritually and material. It's in that home because that's where that dynamic is at work. That's where that complementarity is at work. So when we neglect all of that, what we start to do is we start to look outside of our home. And the more we look outside of our home, the more our marriage rots from within.
Yep, right, right. And for us, we have to understand that us as women, like we said, this is where our power is. This is where our power is. And I don't think that men even understand the power that women have either. They gravitate towards it.
Yeah.
But they don't really understand what it is that they need.
Yeah.
And we as women, we create that space for them to understand. That's really what curation is.
Yeah.
That's essentially what what it is.
Yes, curation. You say that subconscious dialogue that the woman has with the man. Meaning, like you said, we may not know what it is, but it's literally like a magnetic pull. It's like a gravitational pull where you just continuously return to this space, and that's because that space is giving you the kind of environment necessary for your growth. Like I said, it has that anchoring effect. You see, and I think when you're invested in that anchoring effect, what you have is you stabilize your marriage. And this is what rites of passage in Africa was all about, by the way. The right for the women, at least. For the women, the rites of passage was in order to train the girls up so that when they became of age, they knew how to curate. And it was meant to train the boys up so when they came up to age, they could be warriors, meaning they could protect the perimeter.
Right.
So when those two dynamics are operating at the highest level, what you have is what? A marriage. You have what? Courtship to marriage. You see, in the courtship institution was just to select the right person.
It was just to select the
right initiates, the people who have cleared those rites of passage and say, okay, now you're ready to get married. Yeah.
And then we have to ask ourselves, these people, because there's a lot of people who tell you to date within your marriage, and you have to ask yourself, what are they really saying? Let's dissect what they're really saying. What they're telling you is, if you can be married for 10, 7, however many years, but you still need to do things that you did when you first met. Does that make sense? Because shouldn't we be evolving? Shouldn't we have matured outside of this space to needing to date each other?
To the point where we're prioritizing it?
Right, to the point. Because we're not saying that you're not going to go out and do things together.
You're going to but it's incidental.
Right.
Meaning it's not, I'm going out specifically to have fun.
Exactly.
It's like, no, my life is organized in a way where I have a joy within me that I don't have to seek fun. Fun is just an element of my life.
Right.
I have fun, I have substance, I have wisdom, I have all the things I need because I've organized my life so that those things come to me and I don't have to seek it.
Right. But the person who's dating within their marriage, what they're saying is their marriage is substanceless.
Right.
Their marriage is weak, and they use the dates to give it that spice, to give it that jolt. Because the person within the home, the woman in the home, is not curating the space enough for the man to feel and for her to feel secure in their position. Right? So we have to ask ourselves, when people say date within your marriage, they're telling you, and we've actually even seen people, they tell you to let's go on dates and pretend that we didn't role play. Let's role play and go on a date and pretend that we didn't know each other, and let's figure out like we're
reverting to an immature state. You see, when you're aging, when you're getting older and your marriage is getting more mature, you should say, I don't want to go back to that stage where I didn't know what I was doing. I don't want to go back to the stage of uncertainty.
Right, or I want to go back to the stage where I didn't know my husband the way I know him now.
Right.
You see, like, why would I want to go back to when I didn't know him as a father and I didn't know him as a husband? Why would I want to go back to that space in him? He was a different man, and I was a different woman when he didn't see me as a mother and a wife. Why would we want to go back to the environment of dating when we were very, just happens.
And also when we have elderhood to look forward to.
Yeah, we got things to look forward to.
I'm on the path to elderhood, but you're telling me to go back to when I was like 20-something.
And how are our children, how are we mirroring for our children what it means to be in relationships and to be committed to each other when they see their parents get dressed up and leave the home where the children are to go get a babysitter so that they can go get a bite to eat when they can eat together at the home with their children. Like, why? But this has nothing to do with sustaining the marriage. This is what we're saying. Dating has nothing to do with sustaining the marriage, but it does have everything to do with communicating to one another subconsciously that we're not really invested in this. Because imagine if you took the dates and you took the restaurants, you took all that stuff away and said we can't go out. How would these marriages last? How would they last?
Yeah, come to a rural part of the continent.
Yeah, and
where there are no like Applebee's and Red Lobsters and Yard Houses and there are no restaurants. So now what you gonna do?
How would they? How would they maintain themselves?
Yeah, you gotta talk. You gotta dialogue.
You gotta dialogue.
You gotta practice intimacy. You gotta be creative. Meaning,
creative.
I gotta, how about we write poems about each other?
Let me write you a poem.
How about I take you to the beach? How about I, give you a foot bath? How about, we spend time with our son and talk to him about his novel? You see, like, these are all ways of building
a date, but it was
intimacy, and it's curated, by the way, by the mother. You see, the mother is curating this. So you get a deeper bond when you focus on things where you're actually accessing your inner self and you don't have to just passively allow these external institutions to organize it for you.
Right.
So we want to focus in on, though, this point of when we fetishize dating, and notice I said fetishize. Okay, when we fetishize dating, we are neglecting not just our relationship, but our children as well. Okay, so what does that mean? The holistic development of our children requires that both parents make the family home their primary and most active environment of relationship building. The primary, most active environment, meaning, like Mama Jahi was saying, if the parents are constantly going outside of the home to add that extra stimulus to their relationship, then the children are going to be feeling neglected, because understand, as parents, we're their models, meaning they're going to learn how to navigate their relationships based on how we do navigate our relationships.
Absolutely.
So meaning, if my wife and I, if we're out at some restaurant eating together and having an awesome conversation, but our son is at home, how is he benefiting from that dynamic?
He's not seeing
you see, nobody's benefiting from that dynamic but me and her. And again, when you become married, you become selfless, meaning you're supposed to, meaning that I should be shrinking and that other should be expanding.
Right.
So in the spirit of that expanding other, we have to understand, after you have children, which is the consummation of the marriage, we should be figuring out ways to incorporate them into our marital dynamic. Meaning, when I'm communicating with my wife, I want to make sure my son sees it, because I don't want him to grow up and mistreat a woman because nobody ever showed him how to treat a woman. You see, so this is about being intentional and being aware of the fact that we're models. You see, we're not just consumers, obsessed with individual satisfaction. No, we have a mission, and in service of that mission, we have to make more deliberate decisions in how we conduct our relationships.
We have to, because what's happening, and we'll talk about this next, is our parents didn't model the way things were supposed to be done for us, right? And this is why our generation, talking about us as a collective, not individually, as a collective, our parents dropped the ball, right? Because we have a lot of single people. We have a lot of people who even get into marriages but can't maintain them. So this is a reflection on their inability to instill in us the right values, right? As a people. And we have to address that, right? We have to really address that. So for us, what our goal is to make sure that our children know how to get into relationships, that our children know how to court or be courted, right? Like, and they have to have value too. So the only way, though, that you can get your child prepared to be courted or to court is they have to have value. They have to see value in their presence. They can't be depressed. They can't be suicidal. They can't have social anxiety and awkward, like all of these things that Black people say that they have. These are indicators that they don't feel their value, and when you don't feel your value, the other person doesn't feel it either. So they're not going to pay a bride price. They're not going to build you a home, because these are all things that happen within courtship, right?
Yes.
In courtship, the man comes to the woman and her family and say, what do I need to do for me to be eligible to be with your daughter?
Yes.
What do I need
have
to
to
do?
give livestock?
Do I have to give
livestock? Do I have
livestock?
to build a house? Do I have to work some land? Do I have to pay a bride price? You see,
Do you need me to build a house in the back for you all to live as well?
Yeah.
How many rooms did you say you wanted?
Yeah.
This is what it looks like when you are courting. But if the person doesn't have value, and this is what all of this is bringing us back to this. If the person doesn't feel their value, and the parents of that daughter have not instilled in her any true values that she could present to a man, that he would be like, I want that, I need that, she's not going to court.
No.
Because she's going to revert to dating.
Yes.
Because she doesn't have that value system behind her to give her that confidence to say, I have something that other women or other people don't have, so I don't need to date. I'm going to attract, the man is going to come to me and court me, right? But because our families really, really dropped the ball, right? Our families did us a disservice, because what they didn't do is they didn't instill in us the tools and the patience, and they told us, go to corporate America, go to college, get a job, get a degree, start your career. That's what they was teaching us. They weren't teaching us how to be wives and mothers and to have value enough to where a man would literally pay. And if you notice in America, who pays for the wedding?
The father's family.
The
daughter's family.
The daughter's parents.
The daughter's
pay for the wedding.
Yeah.
But in Africa, the husband pays the daughter's parents for her. You see, so that tells you right there.
It's a bride.
It's a bride price.
Yeah.
And because they said this woman has intrinsic value because she knows how to nurture. She knows how to be kind and gentle. She knows how to welcome her man when he comes in. She knows how to, humble herself. She knows how to, bring children around her. She's a great sister. She's a great aunt. She's a great cousin. She's a great everything. But we didn't get that as black women from America. We brought and came. Huh? Yeah, you can. She came and she just said, I'm here. Yeah. I got a degree. And I have what else do I have?
A degree.
And I have a car.
And
I have my
fashion,
own.
A sense of style.
I have a sense of style. I'm a fashionista, actually. I have that. And that's it. You see? And the man is like, okay, well, I'm going to date you. Because 5 other girls have those same things. 5 other women have those same attributes. So I'm going to just pick and figure out who I want to be with. Because y'all all kind of the same, essentially. So what we're saying is, this is why we tell people to obtain the culture. Seek that culture. Because the culture is what separates you.
Yes. And the environment is critical.
Very.
Meaning, a lot of the things that we're recommending, they aren't as easy to apply if your culture is just oversaturated with all of the negative influences of media and propaganda and pornography. Huge problem.
Huge problem.
All these blockers on the curation ability of the woman. She can't really do this in American context. She doesn't have the family bonds either.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is, even if you weren't socialized in a culture that practices courtship, the best thing you can do is to migrate to a place where they do have that, and then make sure your children are picking up where their ancestors left off.
Right.
And the last point we want to make is that non-intentional parenting leads to generations who don't have enough value to be courted. And no one wants to pay a bride price for Sukiyana. Okay? Nobody wants to pay a bride price for, someone who is just pathologically self-hating, pathologically vulgar,
or Megan Thee Stallion,
pathologically, just against themselves to the point that they don't even allow themselves to receive love. You see? So we have to understand, when we're intentional as parents, we're setting the stage for them to be mothers, fathers, wives, and husbands. Okay,
and that's all this is about, right? We're saying, as African women and men, but we're specifically talking about women right now, we have value, right? And the only way we can get back to that value, to where we don't have to date, and we can feel our power, is in the home. It's in our essence as mothers, as wives, as being a woman of patience and kindness and understanding. These are all values that make you courtable, right? And attributes that make you dateable are this feminist and don't trust these men, and like, you know, this very
I can do what I want.
can do what I want.
Even if I'm a mother, and even if I have a responsibility to a community. Because remember, in the African context, you don't just have responsibility for your family. You have a responsibility for your people. Because again, it's communal. It's communal,
right.
Meaning the people, because they reared you up, they now saying, because we reared you up, you now reciprocate what we poured into you by pouring back into us. You don't let somebody rear you up and then you run off and say, oh, I do what I want. That's called ingratitude. And ingratitude begets spoilage, okay? And so we have to outgrow this kind of culture of spoilage that says we don't care what happens to our people because we're getting what we want.
So this is actually a great question. Thank you for asking this, daughter. She said, do you think young women should stay home until marriage? Absolutely. We actually were talking about this morning when we were making notes for this. And another reason why we can't court the way we're supposed to is because our parents are pushing us out the house too early. They're pushing us into these corporate spaces. They're telling you, get out my house, get out my house. And courting needs a familial environment, right? So this is why on the continent, the daughters stay home until they're married.
Yes.
What do you leave in the house for? I need to be here to assist you to make sure that you get into the right relationship for our family.
Yes.
Right? But that looks like oppressive to people who have been, you know, in the West for too long.
Yeah.
So go ahead, baby.
No, I was going to say it's because this idea of kicking the child out the house when they become of age, this is about the parent kind of trying to avoid accountability for the fact that they didn't prepare the daughter for wifehood or motherhood.
Can you say that again, Papa?
The parent is kicking the daughter out the house, or she's making the daughter leave the house when she's 18 because she doesn't want to deal with the fact that she didn't invest the proper amount of time in preparing her for wifehood. You see, because he said, "Oh, you can be single over there, because if the daughter stays in the house, then she's going to see, oh man, my daughter, she can't get dates. My daughter, she can't get, married.
Nobody wants to.
What did I do wrong?" But we have to understand when we do that, what we're creating is a cycle of generational prolonged singlehood.
Right.
Meaning, when you kick the daughter out the house, she's going to struggle to find a partner, and then she's not going to have anything to teach her daughter.
Right.
So what we're saying is that we can stop that generational cycle by saying we're going to do things differently. We're going to do things in a way that we're saying, okay, as our child gets older, we're going to get closer to the child, not more distant from the child, because
closer.
As that child transitions from adolescence to adulthood, they're going to need our guidance because we've lived enough adulthood where we can tell them, okay, watch out for that trap, watch out for that, pitfall, watch out for that threat, but if you just release them into the wilderness, which is what the West is, a wilderness with no real cultural foundation, then they're going to be eaten alive.
And this is why we've been dating for years. Why are we dating for years? Courtship would be like a year to 2 years max. You see, courtship is a year to 2 year max. So we're not in these spaces for long periods of time. Yeah.
So I was one of the sisters says, I get what you say, but if your family is toxic, then what? Okay, so this is a very important question because unfortunately for a lot of us who come from the West, our families are toxic. And that's not because we just, we're just, genetically incapable of being decent, but that's shared psychosis. The fact that we live in a white society, their values infect our homes.
Right.
So what we did when we understood that our family has toxic traits that wasn't conducive to the type of family we envision for ourselves is we moved to a place where people did have it. And understand, family is a spiritual category, not a biological one. That's one of the ways in which we are prevented from accelerating and advancing as a people is we think because we have blood ties to people, because we grew up with people, because we knew them since elementary school, we can't then create what's called fictive kin. Meaning in Tanzania, anybody I see, I can call them kaka. That's brother. I don't have to have met them. I don't have to have shared their DNA, but we're both Africans, so that's my brother. If I see a woman, I can call her Dada. No DNA shared between us, but we're both African. So when you define family in that spiritual sense, meaning I want a family that not just shares my DNA, but I want people who share my values, who share my culture, who share my vision for myself, who are rooted to their ancestors, because remember, the ancestors are also part of the family. You see, even though you can't see them, they're part of that circle.
That's part of that circle.
So once you revise your concept of familyhood, what you'll understand is now you have access to ways of developing and maturing that you could not have possibly accomplished if you just restricted yourself to that biological definition. Yeah.
This is another question. That's a great.
Yeah. My partner and I have been dating for some years. It was said that courtship lasts 1 to 2 years. How do we transition out of that dating energy? Okay, so I don't know if courtship should last 1 to 2 years. I know with us, we was dating for about a year and a half. But courtship typically is a lot more faster paced because remember, courtship isn't about the feelings of the people involved.
Right.
Meaning, you're not saying, okay,
Do I love him?
do I feel like I'm ready to be married?
Right.
No, it's about, are all the prerequisites culturally in place for
Right.
this marriage to succeed?
Right.
Meaning, does he value being a father? Do you value being a mother? Is he capable of sacrificing and holding himself accountable? Are you capable of sacrificing and holding yourself accountable? Have there been a meeting of the families? Do the families get along? You see, after all of those prerequisites are met, usually the marriage comes immediately after. And then even after that, you're going to have a child within the first 2 years of that marriage. You see, so understand, when we're talking about African tradition, it was important to get people married at a young age because they knew that prolonged singlehood has a degenerative effect on the mind.
Brain, yep.
Meaning, the minute you leave your mother's house, you should be going into another house of your husband.
Right.
Or if you're a man, you should be partnering up with your wife.
Singleness is like being homeless.
It's like it's a form of psychological homelessness.
Absolutely.
And we can say this again because we dealt with it. Like my wife said, we didn't get married till we was 30. And I always wanted to be married. I wanted to be married when I got in my 20s, but I wasn't trained, or I wasn't educated in a way that I knew how to do it. So I had to educate myself. So again, that's what we have to understand. It's about courtship. It's not a timestamp thing. It's more of an intentionality thing. Meaning, are all the prerequisites met? And if all those prerequisites are met, then you should be married.
Right.
You know, you should be on that path of marriage. You should be engaged at least.
And this is why we said the thing about homelessness is because when you kick the person out, they're in this limbo, right?
Yeah.
When you're single, you're in limbo. We're not designed to be single.
No.
We're communal people by
Yes.
nature. As African people, we're designed to be in community. So when you have people in their own apartments by themselves, you need stuff like Netflix and games and all these extra things to fill your time and your space, because it's not natural to be single, especially for extended periods of time. So just to go back to the question earlier about whether the children should stay in the home, absolutely. If it's a daughter, she should be in the home until she gets married. And what this does is it forces the mother and the father to invest in that daughter, because I'm sure they don't want the children there until their 30s.
Yeah.
Right. So there's like, I'm going to raise my child. I'm going to invest. I'm going to sacrifice the now so I can make sure my children not only leave my home, but when they leave the home, they're in healthy relationships. They're in meaningful relationships. I don't have to worry about my daughter getting hit upside the head,
or coming to me crying,
or being cheated on. Like, I don't have to worry about that because I invested in her enough so that, and I was in the process. I was involved in the process of the courtship. You see, so when the parents are invested, this also is another thing about courtship. When you court, you create this system around you where other people are accountable for your relationship because they endorsed it.
It's an enclosed space.
It's an enclosed space, right? So because I endorsed this relationship, now I'm more invested in it. And now you have a community of people to come to and be like, I need help. We're going through this. We're going through that. Can you assist me? And they're definitely more likely to help because they gave you away. They invested in it versus
marriage has stakeholders.
Right. Versus when you date, ain't nobody was there on those dates.
Yeah.
It was just you and him. You did that.
Yeah.
Y'all did that.
Yeah.
What you coming to us asking us for? You married him. You married her. You see, it's very like you. And this is why marriages fail. Because marriages need a community. We need other married people around us. We need our parents. We need our elders. We need a group of people to be able to invest in us. So it's so many benefits for us to go back to courting, but what we have to get is the value. We have to have something worth courting.
Yes, and that something worth courting is our essence. You see, meaning that part of us that existed prior to the Ma'afa. You see, once we access that part of ourselves, this whole conversation about whether we should date or court won't be a conversation, because it'll be obvious. It's like, of course we're going to court. Of course, when we have an asset, we protect it. We build up a structure around it, and then we train up the youth so that they know how to operate within that structure.
And our children will know how to court, and their children need to know how to court and be courted. Like, you see, we're trying to reactivate this norm and, you know, get back to where we're supposed to do. And then the better version of courtship is arranged marriages, right? Arranged marriages, because the courtship really only came into place when you were dealing with other clans, meaning we didn't really know how your customs and how your norms were, so we needed to evaluate you a little bit more. But if you're marrying within your culture and you're marrying into a more secure family where we all kind of live around each other and we know each other, you don't need to court. You just go down the street and be like, Mambo Dada.
Like an agency.
Like,
Where's my wife?
Where's my Dada, you have a son that's this age and I have a daughter that's this age. How can we get this working, right? But like I said, when you in the presence of white people and you taking on their culture, that sounds like oppression to you.
Yes.
But when you think about it, who would not love for your parents, if you trusted your parents and your parents were decent and they invested in you, who would not trust their parents to go out and find them a spouse? And you don't have to do nothing.
And if you don't trust your parent to find you a spouse, that probably means they didn't prepare you properly, because you don't trust their judgment.
They don't trust their judgment, right? So what we need to ask ourselves is, the reason why we don't like arranged marriages is because we don't trust our parents.
Yes.
We don't trust their decision making. We don't trust their value system. And that's because they weren't really in our presence, right? They were too busy trying to be in corporate America, trying to assimilate with white people, like all of these things. They didn't pour into us the way they needed to. So now we have this subconscious, because if you ask yourself consciously, if you trust your parents, you'll be like, absolutely, yes, I love my mother, I love my father, I trust them. And then you say, okay, can they pick your spouse? And you're like, wait.
No, I didn't say all that.
I didn't say all that. You see? So what we're saying is, that is where true value is. We want our son to trust us enough for us to be a part of who he marries. We've already both of our children, and we've told him this, the older one. We've talked about this with him, and he's only 13, but he knows that for us, we see so much value and we understand how important it is for him to marry somebody that aligns with what we want for our lineage, that we have to be invested.
Because our political power is rooted in our lineage. It's not in us as individuals. That's another lie they tell us. They think you can just become politically powerful off of speeches and campaign stuffing. No, you become politically powerful by being very deliberate about how you trace your lineage, how you project your lineage into the future. Meaning, I'm only allowing people into my family that have a shared vision, that have a shared goal, and we're all working together to get to that destination.
So she asks, do arranged marriages mean love, or is it more for business and love comes at
So this goes back to the African concept. Remember, when we're talking about any word, you have to consider what's the context of the culture that's saying it. Love within an American or Western culture, it means something you fall into. It's very passive, like you slip in a puddle. Now you in love. Cupid comes down, shoots you with the arrow, and now you fall unconscious. Now you in love. From the African point of view, love is it's an achievement. Meaning it's not something that you can just get very easily in the beginning before marriage. Because I know I was thinking this morning, it was like this idea of how could you marry somebody when you're not in love with them? And my answer to that was, how could you love somebody unless you're married to them? Meaning, the longer you're married to somebody, the more you start to understand that what you thought was love before marriage wasn't really love. You learn what love is in the context of marriage, not before marriage. In the nursery rhyme, they say first come love, then come marriage.
Idiots.
That's a European mythology. No, first comes marriage, then comes love. Love is created in the context of marriage, and it's created in the context of child rearing.
I was just about to say children.
Because the mother and the father self, that's our highest self. So meaning, if I'm really going to love my wife, I have to be my highest self. But my highest self is my father's self. You see?
And my highest self
and
is
her
my
highest self
self
is her mother's self. So love is something you evolve into, and you can reap the fruits of that love in your elderhood, when your children are taking care of you,
adults.
when you're reflecting on all the sacrifices and all the struggles that you went through, but you maintain a kind of focus on that end goal.
Right.
So this is what we're talking about when we talk about love from an African point of view. It's not something you just fall into. It's not a feeling. It's something you achieve through shared sacrifice and cooperation.
And it's not looking for constant additives, right? And this is part of the reason why we don't celebrate Mother's Day or Father's Day, because we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Go ahead.
So somebody says, are you two in love? Personal question, but I'm curious. Again, let's look at the language. Love is not something you're in. It's a path. We're on the path of love.
The path of love.
Meaning, the more we grow, the deeper our love grows.
And for us, we've even said love doesn't really feel like a descriptive enough word. It feels very like, because if you can say I'm loving it,
it's too sentimental.
If you can say I'm loving it in regards to McDonald's, then that word already has like a low frequency. Like, this is not love at this point. At this point, this is value.
This is value. I value you.
I value you.
I can literally, I can spiritually understand you. You see, like I'm having a spiritual dialogue with you. Meaning, I don't see you as an individual. I see you through the eyes of your creator.
You
see, like how the creator intended you to be. That's how I see you. You see, that's how I see you.
And it makes it so that, when there is conflict, it's not really conflict, because I see you, in a different space. So, and this is why this is only coming because I believe that our marriage hasn't been in America. Our marriage has been here. So our love, or our compassion for one another, that's probably a better word. Our compassion for one another is deeper than love, right? And because, like you said, we're focusing on our roles as father and mother, it makes it even more deep, right? Because I'm not just looking at him as my husband. I'm looking at him as Baba Jahi. Baba Jahi, meaning the father of my seed, the father of our child. Baba Hakim, the father of our child. So because of that, my patience and my care for him is deeper than if it was just my husband. Right. And somebody says, what is your definition of love? Again, there is no individual. Remember, love is a cultural category. The culture defines what love is. And according to African culture, love is something you achieve through in the context of marriage. Love is something you achieve. So if you had to give a definition of love,
if I had to give a definition of love, I would say love is the path that you walk throughout life to actualize your highest self. Whatever that fatherhood, that path you walk to get to there, that's love.
So it's not
that energy,
something
that,
you're in.
That kind
it's
of,
not like a bowl of water.
That force against your back that pushes you forward to your higher self. That's love. Even when you feel like you can't do it, that force that pushes you forward, that's love.
That's love, right? Okay.
It's not a feeling, you see. It's literally a process. It's a process.
And we really say nakupenda sana, which is I love you in Kiswahili, but it's not really I love, because
it's I love and care about you.
That's
what it means.
Like I care about you. Right. So we really are thankful for this discussion. It's something that we're passionate about as people, as black people. As married people, we want black people to be in marriages, meaningful, healthy, functional relationships, right? And this is why we spend the time to even talk about these things and go live and this. So we created a class called Indivisible, Mending Monogamous Relationships Between Black Men and Women. And we're going to be having that live conversation at a course on August the 5th. August the 5th. The RSVP information is in our bio if you feel the need to join. If you know somebody that needs to be there, it will be a presentation, and at the end we'll have a Q&A. So we're really excited about it, because like we said, this is where our passion is, because we understand that until we can get into relationships and manage them and understand that our relationships are many nations, then we never will have the power that we need as melanated people, as black people. So if you know somebody who needs to hear this message, please share this live with them. We'll make sure to save it onto my page. Is there any more comments that you wanted to address?
Let me see. I think it was one more. It says, what would y'all suggest if someone has children with someone who is not providing, protecting, or creating provisions? Should you stay because you're married with children? Okay, so what do you think? I mean, our idea, so from an African point of view, the children are the consummation of the marriage.
Right.
Meaning once you have children, the marriage is consummated. So essentially you stay in the marriage because the child is there. Now we have to understand, because the West isn't a child-centered society, because they don't put a high value on children, it gets more complicated. Meaning when the father isn't providing for the children, which is usually a sign that he's also not providing for he's abusing the wife in a way, you know, because I'm of the opinion that someone cannot be a bad husband but a good father.
Right.
You see, meaning how he relates to the wife is going to inform how he relates to the children.
Right.
So if he's not relating to the children, the most vulnerable member of the household, in a way that's upstanding, then he's probably not relating to you either in an upstanding way. And in that case, I think you should leave. But again, remember, all of these problems, these are happening because we're living in a society where we've been socially engineered not to take ownership of our responsibility. Not just women, but men as well.
Right, and I think we would need to know more information
about
the relationship before we would say to leave, because a lot of times, you know, we think that things are a lot more dire or a lot more unbearable than they really are, because we don't really have the patience and the wherewithal. So I would say that we need to know more information. We do actually have an option on our website to book a consultation with us about relationship advice, because that's just something that we had a marriage counselor before we came, or premarital counselor before we came to the continent, and it's really something that we as black people need to communicate with married people, not single people, married people, and get that advice. So I would say, I know Baba said to leave, but I would say we would need to know more information.
I mean, I was saying leave if the situation is abusive. That's essentially what I was saying. If it's an abusive situation, that's just like a no-brainer.
Yeah. If abuse is involved,
I'm saying if it's abusive, leave. If it's not abusive, then yes, it's more complicated. You have to get counseling.
Right.
But that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying just leave, without any type of forethought. You know, because these are. When you're talking about divorce, remember, this is about nations.
Yes.
So when you break up a marriage, you're breaking up a nation.
Right.
You know, so that's how you have to think about it.
You have to think about it in that regard. So we thank y'all again for being on here. We definitely would love to continue the conversation in the comments, or feel free to message us privately. We do have a lot of conversations with people in private messages. Thank you again for joining. We appreciate you, and we will see you in our course in individual.
Ashe.
Courtship.